New York City, a place that never sleeps. The lights never fade, and neither do the secrets buried beneath its streets. And tonight, one of those secrets was about to begin. With a dance. The ballroom glittered under golden chandeliers. Music echoed, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the air, a world of money, power, and pretenders. But in the middle of that crowd was her. Aria. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She didn't care about the suits or the diamonds. She was just dancing, lost in the rhythm, spinning like the world belonged to her. And that's when he saw her. Across the room, standing near the edge of the crowd, Rafael DeLuca, the most feared name in New York's underworld. A man who didn't believe in accidents or in fate until that moment. He watched her. Every move, every breath, every flicker of light on her hair. It wasn't lust at first. It was something deeper. Something dangerous. He felt it clawing at his chest, a feeling he hadn't known for years. His men were talking. Deals, territories, money. But Rafael wasn't listening. His eyes were on Aria, the girl who danced like she had no idea the devil himself was watching her. When she turned, their eyes met. And for a second, the noise of the party faded, just silence, and that look. He tilted his head slightly, curious, intrigued, almost amused. And she, bold as fire, didn't look away. That was her first mistake. Rafael wasn't a man who let things go. When he wanted something, or someone, he made it his. And Aria had just become something he couldn't unsee. The song ended. The crowd cheered. Aria laughed, her smile lighting up the room, innocent, unaware of the storm that was already forming around her. Rafael nodded once to his bodyguard. A silent command. Minutes later, when she stepped outside to breathe under the cold New York night, a black car was waiting at the curb. She thought it was a coincidence. It wasn't. A man in a black suit stepped forward. "Miss Aria?" She blinked. Yes?" He opened the car door. Mr. DeLuca would like a word. Confusion flickered in her eyes. Who? But before she could finish, Rafael stepped out from the shadows. Black suit, gold chain, cold gray eyes that seemed to see through everything. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "Get in," he said quietly. His voice wasn't a threat. It was a promise. She hesitated, heart pounding. Something in her told her to run. But something else, something wild, had whispered, "Don't." And so she stepped inside. The car door shut. The city lights blurred as they drove away, deeper into his world. That night, she didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he was capable of. But one thing was certain. From the moment he saw her dancing, her life would never be the same again. And Rafael, for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't control. Something dangerous. Something that felt like love. The city faded behind them, swallowed by the dark. Streetlights turned into shadows, and laughter turned into silence. Aria sat quietly in the back seat, her heart racing with every turn the car made. She didn't know where they were going. Didn't know who he truly was. All she knew was that the man sitting beside her, Rafael DeLuca, made the air around her feel heavier, sharper, dangerous. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared out the window, his jaw clenched, his hands resting calmly, too calmly. Everything about him said power, control, the kind of control that didn't need words to be obeyed. Finally, Aria broke the silence. "Where are you taking me?" His eyes shifted toward her, cold, unreadable. "Somewhere safe," she let out a nervous laugh. "You call kidnapping safe?" He didn't react. He just leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping low. "If I wanted to hurt you, you wouldn't be sitting here talking to me." Her breath caught. Something in the way he said it, not cruel, not mocking, made her chest tighten. The car slowed, then stopped in front of massive iron gates. Beyond them stood a mansion, tall, hidden behind trees, its windows glowing faintly in the dark. Guards stood at every corner. Cameras watched every angle, Aria whispered, almost to herself. This is your house?" Rafael looked out the window, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "My world," he said simply. "And tonight, You're part of it. Inside, the mansion was beautiful. Marble floors, soft lights, art from places she'd only seen in magazines. But it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a cage wrapped in gold. Raphael walked ahead, and she followed, trying to understand what was happening. Why him? Why her? He stopped near a grand piano, turning toward her. "You dance well," he said finally. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. Like he'd been studying her. She crossed her arms. You brought me here just to tell me that?" He stepped closer. "No." His eyes locked on hers, steady, unblinking. "I brought you here because I couldn't stop thinking about you. And that's not something I allow myself often." Arya froze. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not with that kind of honesty, that weight. "Why me?" she asked softly. He paused. For the first time, his mask slipped, just a little. "Because you looked free," he said quietly, "and I forgot what that felt like." In that moment, she saw it. Behind the power, the danger, the reputation, there was a man carrying something heavy, something broken. Raphael stepped back slightly, giving her space. "You can leave in the morning," he said. "No one will stop you." Arya blinked, surprised. "Then why bring me here at all?" He looked down, almost smiling. "Because sometimes," he murmured, "I just need to remember that something pure still exists, even if it's just for one night." The words lingered between them, soft but sharp. Arya didn't know what to say. She just stood there, her heartbeat echoing in her chest. As he turned to walk away, she whispered, "Raphael." He stopped, but didn't turn. "What?" "I'm not afraid of you." He finally looked over his shoulder, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. For the first time, Raphael De Luca, the man everyone feared, almost smiled. That night, Arya slept in a room filled with silence and secrets. And somewhere down the hall, Raphael stood by the window, staring into the darkness, trying to understand why one girl, one dance, had shaken his entire world. Because for the first time in his life, the Mafia boss didn't feel in control. He felt alive. The sun crawled through the tall curtains of Raphael's mansion, slow, quiet, almost hesitant. It was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of fear, but of curiosity. Arya woke to the sound of birds and the faint echo of footsteps outside her room. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The party, the car, the man with gray eyes who didn't ask. He decided. She got up, walked to the window, and looked outside. The mansion wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. Tall walls, guards, expensive cars, and that heavy New York skyline in the distance. Somewhere down there, she thought, people were rushing to work, falling in love, living normal lives. And she was standing in the home of a man people whispered about in fear. Still, she didn't feel afraid. Not exactly. When she stepped outside her room, she found a hallway lined with art, the scent of fresh coffee floating in the air. And then she saw him, Raphael, sitting in the garden through the glass doors, a cup in his hand, the morning light falling on his face. He looked different, less like a monster, more like a man lost in thought. Arya hesitated, then walked toward him. The guards nearby straightened, but Raphael lifted a hand, and they backed away. He didn't even look, just felt her presence. "Did you sleep?" he asked, eyes still on the horizon. "Not much," she admitted. "Hard to relax when you wake up in a stranger's house." A faint smirk curved his lips. "You could have left." The gates were open. She frowned. "You were testing me?" He finally looked at her. That same calm, unreadable expression. "I was curious." "About what?" "Whether you'd run or stay." His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried weight, like he already knew the answer. And somehow so did she. "I don't know why I stayed," Arya said quietly. "Maybe I just wanted to know what kind of man kidnaps someone, and then lets them go." Raphael leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "The kind who's used to getting what he wants," he said, "but doesn't know what to do when he finally gets it." There it was again. That strange honesty. Cold but real, she looked at him, studying his face. "You don't scare me, Raphael." He almost laughed. "That's what scares me." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, silence louder than words. There was something between them neither could name. Not yet. Finally, he stood. "Come with me." He led her through a long hallway until they reached a private studio. Polished wood floors, tall mirrors, a sound system in the corner. "This," he said, "was my mother's. She used to dance here." Arya turned to him, surprised. "You kept it all this time?" He nodded. "It's the only place in this house that feels alive." Without another word, he pressed play. Soft jazz filled the room, slow, elegant, haunting. He gestured toward her. "Dance," she blinked. "Here, now?" He didn't move, didn't smile, just said, "I want to see the girl from last night again." At first, she hesitated, but then she began to move. Graceful, unscripted, free. Her feet brushed against the floor like she was made of air. Raphael watched, not as a man used to owning things, but as someone remembering what beauty felt like. For the first time in years, he wasn't the one in control. She was. When the music faded, she turned toward him, breathless. He took a slow step closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now you know why I couldn't look away." The room felt still. Every sound, every breath vanished. And though neither spoke another word, both knew. Something had changed, voiceover closing, calm, reflective. That morning didn't end with goodbyes. It ended with silence, with two people who should never have met, now unable to forget each other, because for Raphael, curiosity had turned into obsession. And for Arya, fear had turned into fascination. The story of power and freedom had just begun. For the next few days, the mansion grew quieter, yet somehow more alive. Arya wandered through its endless halls, trying to make sense of everything, the guards, the silence, and the man whose shadow seemed to follow her everywhere. Raphael kept his distance. He watched her through quiet glances. At breakfast, in the garden, through the glass doors of the dance studio. He never said much, but every look felt like a conversation neither of them knew how to end. Arya had told herself she'd leave, that she'd walk out those gates the moment she found her courage. But somehow, every morning she found a new reason to stay. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was madness, or maybe it was him. One evening, as the sun set behind the New York skyline, Raphael called her to his study. The room smelled of leather and smoke, books lining the walls, an old gramophone playing faintly in the corner. He stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, his gold chain glinting faintly against the light. When he turned, his eyes were calm, too calm. "I have an offer for you," he said. Arya frowned. "An offer?" He nodded slowly. "Stay here with me for 1 month." She blinked, confused. "You're serious?" "I don't joke about things I want," he replied. Her heartbeat quickened. "And what exactly would I be doing? Being your prisoner again?" His jaw tightened, not in anger, but restraint. "No, I don't need a prisoner. I need something else." He walked closer, his voice low, deliberate. "I've spent my life surrounded by liars, killers, and people who would sell their souls for power. I don't trust anyone, not my men, not my allies. But you," he paused, studying her, "you don't belong in this world. You don't want anything from me, and that makes you real." Arya's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "You think keeping me here makes me real?" He smiled faintly, a rare, fleeting smile. "It makes me remember that I still am." The silence between them stretched. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, rain beginning to tap against the glass. Arya looked at him, the man the world called a monster, and saw someone human underneath all the danger. But she also saw the risk. The more she stayed, the deeper she'd fall. "Why a month?" she finally asked. Raphael's gaze held hers. "Because if you stay longer, I won't be able to let you go." Her breath caught. He meant it. Every word. The thunder grew louder. Lightning flashed. Arya turned toward the window, unsure whether she was looking at the storm outside or the one inside her chest. After a long silence, she said quietly, "And if I say no?" Raphael's voice dropped, soft, almost sad. "Then I'll drive you back myself. No one will stop you." She looked at him again. The calm, unreadable eyes, the strength, the danger, and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She was drawn in, like the world's most beautiful mistake. Finally, she whispered, "1 month." A flicker of relief passed across his face. Subtle, almost invisible. He nodded once. "Good," he said. "Then let's not waste time pretending to be something we're not." That night, the storm outside raged for hours. But inside the mansion, another kind of storm began, quieter, slower, and far more dangerous. Because in saying yes, Arya had stepped into a game she didn't understand. And Raphael, for the first time in years, was no longer the hunter. He was falling, too. In a world built on power, betrayal, and silence. Love was the one thing neither of them had planned for, and it was already too late to turn back. A week had passed since Arya agreed to stay. 1 week inside Raphael De Luca's world, a world of whispered phone calls, locked rooms, and faces that never smiled long. She still didn't know exactly what he did, only that people obeyed him, and no one ever said his name loudly. Tonight, he'd invited her to dinner. Not in the dining hall with a dozen men in suits, but in a quiet corner of the mansion lit by candlelight and rain. Arya stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her dress, trying to decide why her hands were shaking. She told herself it wasn't a date. It was just dinner, with a man whose reputation could freeze blood, and whose eyes somehow made her feel safe. When she entered the room, Raphael was already waiting. Dark suit, no tie, sleeves rolled to his forearms. A single rose lay on the table beside 2 plates of untouched food. He looked up, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You clean up well," he said. She smiled back. "You don't look too terrifying yourself." He laughed quietly, a sound so rare she almost forgot to breathe. For a few moments they ate in silence. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, the flicker of candlelight softened the edges of everything sharp between them. Arya broke the silence first. "You never talk about yourself." Raphael's fork paused midair. "There's not much worth saying." "That's not true." She leaned forward slightly. "You run this entire place. Everyone listens to you. People are afraid of you." "That doesn't happen by accident." He gave a small, tired smile. "Fear is easy to earn. Respect. That's harder. Do you have either?" she asked. His eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "I used to think I had both. Now I'm not sure." He set down his glass, leaning back. "When I was your age, I thought power fixed everything. But it only builds taller walls. You start locking people out to stay safe, until one day you realize you're the one trapped inside." Arya studied him, not as a criminal, but as a man confessing without asking for forgiveness. "You don't have to live like that," she said softly. Raphael looked at her for a long moment. "You say that like freedom is something I can just take. Maybe you just need to remember what it feels like." He smirked slightly. "That's why you dance, isn't it? To feel free." She nodded. "And that's why you watch, because you've forgotten." For the first time, Raphael looked away. Not in anger, but thought. Outside, the rain began again, tapping gently against the glass. "Arya," he said finally, "there are things about me you shouldn't want to know. If you stay long enough, you'll see things you can't unsee." "I'm not afraid of what's outside," she replied. "I'm afraid of the walls you build around yourself." The room went still. Raphael's expression softened, a rare, unguarded moment. He stood, walked to the piano, and pressed one single key, a soft note echoing through the room. "My mother used to play," he said, "before the world got too loud." Arya joined him slowly. "Then make it quiet again." He looked at her, really looked at her. and for a second, the man the world feared disappeared. Only Raphael remained. Dinner ended long after the candles burned low. No promises, no confessions, just two people sharing silence that meant more than words ever could. As Arya walked back to her room, she glanced over her shoulder. Raphael was still by the piano, staring at the single note that refused to fade, because deep down, he knew something was changing. The walls he'd built his empire on were beginning to crack, and the one person who could break them completely was the girl he should have never taken. In a world where trust was a luxury, Arya had become his only truth. And Raphael de Luca, the man who owned everything, was starting to lose the one thing he never planned for: his heart. For days, peace settled over the mansion like fragile glass. Raphael spent more time near Arya. Quiet breakfasts, long walks through the courtyard, moments that felt almost normal. But normal never lasts in a world like his, because in Raphael de Luca's life, peace was never a gift. It was a warning. It started one morning, a phone call, short, sharp, and full of the kind of silence that means trouble. Raphael's expression changed in an instant. His eyes hardened, his jaw locked, and the warmth Arya had begun to trust disappeared. She watched from across the hallway as he hung up and turned to one of his men. "Double the guards," he said. "No one in or out until I say so." Arya stepped forward. "What's going on?" He didn't answer, just looked at her, and that look said enough. Danger was close. Hours passed before he finally came to her room. His voice was low, controlled. "Someone knows you're here." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean someone knows?" "Who?" "A rival family," he said. "They've been watching me for months." "They think you're leverage." Arya shook her head. "Leverage? I don't even belong in this world, Raphael." He stepped closer, his voice a mix of anger and fear. "Exactly. That's what makes you the perfect target." She could see it in his eyes. The guilt, the frustration. This wasn't just business anymore. He'd let someone close, and now that someone was in danger because of him. Raphael paced the room, running a hand through his hair. "You need to stay inside. No windows, no garden, no phone. I'll take care of it." "Take care of it how?" she asked quietly. He turned, eyes flashing. "The only way I know." That answer scared her more than the threat itself. That night the mansion didn't sleep. Men moved like shadows through the halls, radios whispering static. And in the middle of it all, Arya sat by the window, staring at the lights of the city. So close, yet untouchable. She wondered if this was what his world truly was. Power built on fear, love built on danger. Every time she thought she understood him, another wall appeared. Then, the silence broke. A sudden noise outside, quick footsteps, then shouting. Arya froze. Before she could move, Raphael burst into the room. "Stay down," he ordered. She dropped to the floor as he moved to the window, pulling a gun from his jacket. Sleek, black, and steady in his hand. Outside, two men were running along the fence line, shadows against the rain. Shots echoed, sharp, distant. Then silence again. When it was over, Raphael stood still for a moment, listening. Then he turned back, holstering the weapon. "It's handled," he said. But his voice wasn't convincing, because for every threat he stopped, 10 more waited in the dark. Arya looked at him, the calm mask back in place, but the fear still in his eyes. "Is this your life?" she whispered. "Always fighting ghosts?" Raphael didn't answer. He walked toward her slowly, kneeling beside her where she sat on the floor. "You don't belong in this," he said softly. "You should have left when you had the chance." She met his gaze. "Maybe I stayed because I wanted to understand you." His jaw tightened. "You don't. Not yet." For the rest of the night, he stayed outside her door, silent and unmoving, guarding her from a danger he couldn't see. And as dawn crept through the rain, one truth settled between them. Love in Raphael's world wasn't gentle. It came with bullets, shadows, and scars, and no matter how much he tried to protect her. The world he ruled was already reaching for her, because in the life of a mafia boss, The past never stays buried. And the moment he chose Arya, that past began to dig its way back to the surface. Morning crept across the sky like a bruise. Gray, heavy, uncertain. The night's gunfire still echoed in Arya's mind. Downstairs, the mansion buzzed with movement, guards checking cameras, radios whispering codes. And at the center of it all stood Raphael De Luca, expression cut from stone. To his men, he was the same, calm, in control, untouchable. But Arya could see the small things, the tight jaw, the restless hands, the guilt that lived behind his eyes. He found her in the hallway, still shaken but trying to look calm. "You need to come with me," he said quietly. "Where?" "Somewhere no one can find you." She hesitated. "Raphael, I don't want to hide forever." He looked at her then. Really looked. "This isn't about fear. It's about staying alive." The elevator doors opened to a corridor she'd never seen before. Steel, concrete, cold light. At the end was a heavy door with a keypad and a scanner. Raphael pressed his thumb to it. The lock clicked open. Inside lay another world. Soft lights, a couch, a small kitchen, even a piano in the corner. It didn't feel like a prison. It felt prepared. "You built this?" she asked. He nodded once. "Years ago." "For emergencies." Her eyes searched his face. "You've done this before? Protected someone?" He paused. "No, not like this." Hours passed. He stayed near the door, phone in hand, issuing quiet orders. Arya sat by the piano, her fingers tracing the keys, thinking of all the choices that had brought her here. Finally, she spoke. "You don't trust anyone, do you?" Raphael glanced at her. "In my world, trust gets people killed." "Then why trust me enough to bring me here?" He didn't answer right away. He set his phone down, walked closer, and said, "Because for once, I want to believe that not everything I touch turns dark." Silence filled the space between them, the kind that hums with things unspoken. Arya turned back to the piano. Her fingers began to play softly, hesitant notes that grew steadier with each breath. Raphael closed his eyes, listening. For a man who ruled chaos, this sound was peace. When the song ended, he said quietly, "You make the silence bearable." She smiled faintly. "You make it complicated." Hours later, his phone buzzed again. His tone changed immediately. "Talk." Arya could hear the low voice on the other end, urgent, broken by static. Raphael's eyes sharpened. "They know the car we used. They're moving fast." He hung up and exhaled slowly, pressing a hand against the wall. For the first time she saw it, the crack in the armor. "Raphael." He turned to her. "If anything happens to me, don't," she cut in, her voice steady but soft. "You don't get to talk like that." He stared at her, surprised by the defiance in her eyes. "You don't understand what's coming," he said. "Then make me understand," she replied. "Stop shutting me out." The air between them shifted. This wasn't the boss and the girl anymore. This was a man standing face to face with the one person who refused to fear him. Finally, he said quietly, "The people after me, they don't forgive. They'll use anyone. That's why I can't let you walk away now." Arya stepped closer. "Then don't push me away either." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Raphael turned, running a hand through his hair. "I'll fix this. I always do, but at what cost?" she asked. He didn't answer. Because deep down he knew, every time he fixed something, a piece of him broke a little more. That night, they stayed in the safe room, two souls from different worlds, locked between danger and desire neither dared to name. Outside, the storm had passed. But inside, the tension only grew stronger. Arya watched Raphael fall asleep in the chair beside the door, head tilted back, gun resting loosely in his hand. Even in peace, he guarded everything. And for the first time, she realized, maybe what he needed protection from wasn't his enemies. It was himself. In that underground room, trust began to grow, not from safety but from fear shared in silence. Because when the world above was built on lies and violence, the truth between them was the most dangerous thing of all. Morning broke over New York like steel, cold, sharp, and full of noise. Traffic hummed, Sirens cried, and somewhere in the heart of the city, a war was brewing. Down in the safe house, Rafael De Luca stood before a wall of monitors, each one flashing camera feeds, street corners, moving cars. To anyone else, it was chaos. To him, it was order. He had built his empire on control. But control was slipping. The phone on the table buzzed. He picked it up without a word. "Talk," he said. A voice came through, gravelly, rushed. "They hit one of your trucks near the docks. Left a message, boss." Raphael's hand tightened around the phone. "What message?" The man hesitated. "A bullet. And a note. It said, 'She's not yours to keep.'" Raphael's jaw clenched. He didn't need to ask who they were. Only one rival family would be bold enough to threaten him like that. The Morettis. He ended the call and stared at the floor, his reflection staring back from the polished marble. He could protect his empire. He could outshoot, outthink, outlast any enemy. But how do you protect someone innocent from a world built on violence? Arya woke to quiet, too quiet. Raphael wasn't in the room. The chair where he'd fallen asleep was empty, the gun gone. She stepped out into the hallway, following faint echoes of voices. At the control room door, she paused. Inside, Raphael stood surrounded by his men, voice low, sharp. "She's not to leave this house. Double the guards. I want eyes on every exit." Arya's breath caught. It wasn't just fear in his tone. It was desperation. She stepped forward. "Raphael, what's going on?" The room went still. Every man turned. But Raphael didn't. He spoke without looking at her. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Don't lie to me," she said. He turned then, eyes colder than she'd ever seen. "They're coming for you." Arya froze. "Me? Why?" "Because they know hurting me isn't enough anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. The meaning was clear. He had crossed a line he never meant to. He cared. And now his enemies would use that against him. Later, she found him outside on the balcony, city lights glimmering below. The night wind caught in his hair, the gold chain around his neck glinting faintly. She joined him quietly. "You're blaming yourself again." Raphael didn't look at her. "If they touch you, it's because of me." "Then stop fighting the world alone," she said softly. "Let someone stand beside you." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he looked at her, really looked. In his eyes the walls were lowering, brick by brick. "You think you can handle this life?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I don't want your world, Raphael, I just don't want to watch you drown in it." The words hit deeper than she knew. He stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "You don't understand. This world doesn't let go of people like me." "Maybe it doesn't have to," she whispered back. "Maybe it just needs something worth holding on to." For a breath, he almost leaned in, almost let the guard fall completely. But then his phone buzzed again, loud, violent, shattering the moment. He stepped back, jaw tightening. "Stay inside," he said. "Raphael, promise me." She nodded reluctantly. He walked away, his silhouette swallowed by the hallway shadows. That night, the mansion felt smaller. Every sound made Arya flinch, the whisper of footsteps, the creak of walls, the echo of her own heartbeat. Somewhere out there, someone was watching, waiting, and for the first time since she'd met him, Raphael wasn't just the hunter. He was the target. When power meets love, the balance breaks, and in New York, broken balance always means blood. The next 48 hours felt like standing inside a clock that was ticking too loud. Every second meant something. Every silence meant danger. Rafael De Luca barely slept. He ran meetings in whispers, eyes scanning every security feed, every shadow outside the gates. His men reported movement near the river, unmarked cars in the alley behind the mansion. And one of his suppliers had gone dark. It wasn't if the Morettis would strike. It was when, by sunset, the house was locked down. Guards rotated. Lights dimmed. The hum of tension was everywhere. Arya watched from the window of the upstairs room, her reflection framed against the New York skyline. She had never felt so far from the city she loved. The girl who once danced under chandeliers was now trapped behind bulletproof glass. The door opened. Raphael stepped in, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, the faint exhaustion showing beneath the steel. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she replied. "You've got every exit sealed. It's like the world outside doesn't exist." He met her eyes. "That's the point." Arya took a step closer. "You can't lock the world out forever, Raphael. I can lock out the part that wants to kill you." She sighed. "And what about the part that wants to love me?" He froze for half a heartbeat. Then his phone buzzed on the table, short, sharp, urgent. He answered, voice dropping to ice. "What is it?" Static. Then a panicked voice. "Boss, camera 4 just went dark. Eastgate, someone's inside." Music spikes, rising strings. Raphael's gun was in his hand before the phone hit the floor. He turned to Arya, tone clipped and fast. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone." She grabbed his arm. "Wait!" He looked at her, and for the briefest moment, his eyes softened. "If anything happens, hide under the stairs. Remember that." Then he was gone, the halls filled with motion. Boots on marble, radios crackling, shouts echoing. Through the monitors, figures moved in the dark, 3, maybe 4. Too coordinated to be amateurs. Raphael took position at the corner near the east wing, gun steady, heart silent. He had done this 100 times before, but never with someone upstairs he couldn't lose. A shadow moved past the glass. He fired, clean, precise. One down, then another explosion. A flash near the gate. Smoke, alarms. "West side." Someone yelled. "They're flanking us." Raphael cursed under his breath. It wasn't an ambush. It was a distraction. Upstairs, Arya heard the shots. Her pulse raced. She backed toward the door, gripping the knob, but stopped. A whisper drifted through the vent. "Miss Arya?" She froze. The voice was calm, too calm. "I'm here to take you somewhere safe. Mr. DeLuca sent me." Something in the tone was wrong. Too smooth, too polite. She didn't answer. Instead, she remembered Raphael's words. "Don't open the door for anyone." The footsteps outside grew louder. Then the handle turned. Once, twice. Arya's heart pounded. She grabbed the heavy lamp from the table, stepping quietly behind the door. When it burst open, she swung, hard. The man dropped, gun clattering to the floor. She gasped, staring at the tattoo on his wrist. Not Raphael's crew. Moretti. Downstairs, Raphael heard the crash. He ran, fast, furious, a blur through smoke and shadow. "Arya!" He reached the stairs just as 2 more men stormed the hallway. One raised his gun. Raphael fired first. The other lunged, knife flashing. Raphael caught his wrist, twisted, and slammed him into the wall. When the noise stopped, the only sound left was Arya's uneven breathing. He turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded shakily. He said you sent him." Raphael looked at the fallen man, jaw tight. "He's lying. They all lie." He took her hands gently, steadying her trembling fingers. "From now on, you don't listen to anyone but me. Understand?" Her voice broke just a little. "You said I'd be safe here." "I was wrong," he said quietly. "They're getting closer." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Smoke drifted through the broken windows, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder and fear. That night, Raphael realized something no empire could protect him from. Love wasn't his weakness. It was his enemy's best weapon, and for Arya, the dance that started it all was about to become a war she never asked to join. The smoke still lingered in the halls hours after the attack. Windows shattered, marble cracked, the scent of gunpowder mixing with fear. But the real damage wasn't the walls. It was the look in Raphael's eyes. For the first time, the man who ruled New York's underworld looked uncertain. He stood at the balcony, dawn breaking over the skyline. Below him, sirens wailed in the distance, his empire bleeding quietly into the morning. Behind him, Arya spoke softly. "You didn't sleep," Raphael shook his head. "Can't. Not until I know you're safe." She walked closer, voice fragile but firm. "Then tell me what happens now." He turned, every movement controlled. "We disappear. Tonight. There's a cabin north of the city, off the grid. Only 2 people know it exists." Arya's brows lifted. "You mean hide?" "I mean survive." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for the man who had once seemed untouchable. Now, under the gray light, he just looked tired. Human. "Raphael," she said quietly, "you can't run from what you are." He met her eyes. "I'm not running from me. I'm running from everyone who wants to use you against me." Hours later, the mansion came alive again. Guards loading trucks, burning papers, clearing routes. Raphael gave orders like a general preparing for war, every command crisp, every word final. But Arya noticed something else. For all his control, he wouldn't look at her. Every time their eyes met, he turned away. When she finally stopped him near the staircase, her voice broke the hum of chaos. "Why won't you look at me?" He froze, exhaled slowly. "Because if I do, I might not be able to let you go when it's time." Silence stretched. Then she reached for his hand. "Maybe you don't have to." His fingers tightened around hers, rough, trembling. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do," she said. "I'm asking you not to face this alone." Midnight. The city drowned in rain. 2 black SUVs rolled out of the compound, engines low, lights off. Inside the first, Arya watched raindrops streak across the glass like falling stars. Beside her, Raphael sat silent, eyes locked on the road ahead. "Where are your men?" she asked. "Following a different route," he said. "If someone's watching, they'll chase them instead." She looked at him, realizing the weight of the plan. He wasn't just leaving his mansion behind, he was leaving everything. For a moment, the road was quiet. No gunfire, no shouts, just the hum of the engine and the sound of 2 hearts trying to find a rhythm. Arya whispered, "When you saw me that night, at the party, did you know it would come to this?" Raphael gave a faint smile, eyes still forward. "No, I thought it would be one dance. One night, and then you'd forget I existed." She laughed softly. "You don't forget a man who walks in like a storm." He turned his head then, finally meeting her eyes. "And you don't forget a girl who dances like she's not afraid of it." Lightning flashed. Ahead, the bridge shimmered with rain, and then, out of nowhere, a black car cut across the lane. Tires screamed. Raphael swerved, engine roaring. "Hold on!" Bullets shattered the side mirror. He accelerated, voice hard. "They found us!" The chase tore through the night, metal on asphalt, rain blurring the lights. Raphael's grip on the wheel was steady, cold. He wasn't driving to escape. He was driving to win. One sharp turn, a tunnel ahead. He killed the headlights. For 10 seconds there was nothing but darkness. Then the sound of their pursuers crashing into the divider. He didn't slow until miles later, deep in the forest roads. Arya's hands were still shaking when he parked. "Are we safe?" she asked. "For now," he said. She looked at him, the rain dripping from his hair, his knuckles still white. "For now isn't enough," she whispered. He met her eyes, finally letting the guard fall. "It's all I can promise." In the darkness of that forest road, the city lights felt like another lifetime. Raphael had traded power for peace, and Arya had traded freedom for love. Neither knew if they'd made the right choice. But for the first time, they weren't running from something. They were running toward something, each other. And sometimes, that's the most dangerous escape of all. The rain followed them all the way north, past the bridges, past the last city lights, until the skyline vanished in fog. When they finally stopped, the forest swallowed the road behind them. A narrow trail led to a wooden cabin, hidden between tall pines, roof heavy with moss. It didn't look like much, but to Raphael, it was the only place the world couldn't find them. He stepped out first, gun in hand, eyes scanning the trees. Then he nodded once. "We're clear." Arya climbed out slowly, her shoes sinking into wet leaves. The air smelled like pine and rain, not smoke and fear. For the first time in days, it felt like breathing again. Inside, the cabin was quiet. A fire waited half-built in the hearth. Blankets folded neatly on a couch that looked untouched for years. Dust, silence, and safety. Raphael lit the fire. The orange glow cut through the shadows, dancing over his face, the same face that once ruled New York's nightclubs and boardrooms, now softened by exhaustion. Arya watched him for a moment, then smiled faintly. So this is where the great Rafael de Luca disappears? He gave a tired smirk. When I want the world to forget me, yes. She moved closer to the flames, rubbing her hands together. It's peaceful. That's what scares me, he said. Hours passed. They found food in the cabinets, cans, coffee, old pasta. Arya cooked while Rafael fixed the generator, their silence more comfortable than words. When the lights flickered back on, she laughed quietly. Electricity. That's progress. Rafael looked up from the doorway. Don't get used to it. We might need to vanish again. She turned to him, serious now. You really think they'll keep coming? He nodded. The Moretti's lost face. That's worse than losing money. Arya hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted her since that first night. Why me, Rafael? You could have walked away after the party. He met her eyes, the firelight reflecting in them. I tried, but the second you looked back at me, I knew walking away wasn't an option. She laughed softly. That doesn't sound like the ruthless mafia boss I heard about. Maybe that's the problem, he said. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. Silence. Only the crackle of wood between them. Then she said, maybe forgetting isn't so bad. Rafael watched her for a long time. In the glow of the fire, she looked nothing like the world he came from. No diamonds, no danger, just light. And for the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. The storm had faded. Arya sat by the piano in the corner, its keys a little out of tune, the sound soft and human. She played a slow melody, something half-remembered from her childhood. Rafael leaned against the doorway, listening. The notes wrapped around him, dissolving the noise in his head. When the song ended, he said quietly, "Play it again." She looked back at him. You like it? I like that it reminds me there's still beauty in things I didn't destroy. Her smile faded into something gentler. You talk like you're beyond saving. He shook his head. I don't need saving, Arya, just a reason not to keep burning everything I touch. She walked up to him, close enough to feel his breath. You already found one. For a moment, the world shrank to the space between them. The flicker of firelight, the rhythm of rain outside, the sound of two hearts beating too fast. He lifted a hand, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair from her face. Don't do that, he whispered. Do what? Make me want something I can't keep. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the piano and began to play again. This time, Rafael sat beside her, the melody filling the cabin with something neither of them dared to name. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside, the fire burned steady, and in that fragile quiet, they both felt it. The moment between danger and desire, between running and staying. For the first time since the night they met, the world wasn't chasing them. And maybe, just maybe, love had finally caught up. Morning came quietly. The fire had burned down to embers, painting the room in amber light. Arya woke first. Rafael was sitting by the window, still dressed, staring out at the mist. He looked like a statue carved from guilt and sleeplessness. Did you sleep at all? She asked. He didn't turn. People like me don't rest. We just wait for the next thing to go wrong. She got up, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You don't have to be that man here. Rafael let out a rough laugh. That man built everything I have. He also destroyed everything I loved. He finally looked at her, the fire reflected in his eyes, warm and wounded. You said once that you dance because it's the only time you feel free, he said. I used to feel that way when I fought. Not in the ring, before all this. Street fights, dumb, hungry for survival. Then I got good at it. Too good. Arya stayed silent, listening. I started collecting debts, then protecting people who didn't deserve it. Before I knew it, I was sitting at the head of a table with blood on my hands, and no one left to blame but myself. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My father was a cop. He died thinking his son became a lawyer. I never told him the truth. The words hung in the air, heavy and human. Arya's voice broke the silence. Why are you telling me this now? Rafael met her eyes. Because if we die out here, I don't want my story to end as a lie. She walked closer, kneeling in front of him. "You're not a lie," she said. "You're a man who forgot what he wanted to be." He almost smiled, but his voice cracked. "And what do you think that was?" "Someone who protects, not destroys." Raphael exhaled, the sound part laugh, part disbelief. "You talk like you still believe in me." "I do," she said simply, "because I've seen you when no one's watching." He reached out, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "You shouldn't. Believing in me is dangerous." "So is dancing with the wrong man at the wrong party," she whispered. "But I did it anyway." For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them burned with unspoken things that didn't need words, because their eyes already said them. Raphael finally stood, breaking the spell. "I have something for you," he said. He walked to his duffel bag, pulled out a small velvet box, and handed it to her. Arya hesitated. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a silver locket, simple, old, and slightly worn. He looked almost nervous. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "She told me never to give it to anyone unless I meant it." Arya's breath caught. "Raphael, it's not a promise," he said quickly. "Not yet. It's a reminder that even a man like me once came from something pure." She touched the locket like it might disappear. "Then maybe it's time you start remembering who that man was." Raphael turned away, jaw tight. "If I could, I'd take you somewhere the world can't find us. No guns, no debts, no ghosts, just peace." Arya rose, stepping behind him. "Maybe peace isn't a place," she said softly. "Maybe it's a person." He turned slowly, their faces inches apart. For a heartbeat, the world outside vanished. No mafia, no danger. Just rain and the sound of two hearts learning how to trust again. He whispered, almost to himself, "You make me want to live like there's more than violence waiting at the end." "And you make me believe there's more than fear," she replied. In that quiet cabin, beneath a sky that finally stopped raining, two broken souls found something they didn't expect. Not forgiveness, not salvation, but the courage to start over. Because love, even in the dark, was still a kind of light. For the first time in weeks, the morning felt calm. No guards, no city noise, just sunlight cutting through the cabin's dusty windows, painting soft gold across Arya's face. Raphael watched her sleep, peaceful, unaware of the weight he carried. He told himself not to look too long, not to want too much, but every time he saw her, he forgot who he was supposed to be. He turned away, made coffee, tried to pretend he could have a normal day. Arya stirred awake, smiling faintly. "You're up early," he smirked. "Old habit. Hard to sleep when your enemies don't." She sat up, wrapping the blanket tighter. "Can't we have just one morning without that word?" "Enemies." He looked at her, quiet, conflicted. "I wish." The coffee pot hissed, steam rising. Then the sound broke, sharp, unexpected, a vibration. A phone, but not his, not hers. It came from the corner of the room, from the duffel bag Raphael thought he'd burned days ago. He froze. Every instinct sharpened. He crossed the room, grabbed the bag, unzipped it fast. Inside, in a small black phone. Burner type. Screen cracked, unknown number flashing. Calling. Arya frowned. "Raphael?" He raised a hand, motioning her to stay back. Then he answered, "Who is this?" A distorted voice replied, male, cold, familiar. "You really thought you could disappear, didn't you, DeLuca?" Raphael's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. "Marco," he said quietly. "I should have known you'd crawl back." Marco laughed, low and cruel. "Word travels fast when the great Raphael DeLuca goes soft for a dancer. You should have kept business and pleasure separate, brother." Arya's breath caught. Raphael's jaw tightened. "You don't touch her." "Oh, I don't have to," Marco said. "But others might. The city's talking, old friend. They know she's with you. They know where you ran." Raphael's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles went white. "You tell your men if they come near her, I'll bury them all." Marco chuckled. "You can try, but you've forgotten how this world works. You hide, they hunt, and sooner or later someone always bleeds." The line went dead. For a moment, all Raphael could hear was the hum of the cabin generator and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He turned slowly toward Arya. What did he mean? She asked. It means, Raphael said through clenched teeth, we're out of time. Music darkens, storm outside, rising wind. He began gathering weapons, stuffing cash and documents into a duffel. Arya stepped forward. Raphael, talk to me. He looked up, fire in his eyes. They know where we are, Arya. We move now. She shook her head. No. Running again? You said you wanted to stop living like this. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do, she said, voice breaking. You can fight for something different. For us. Raphael stopped. The sound of her voice, the way she said us, hit him harder than any bullet could. He dropped the duffel, exhaled. You think I don't want that? I'd burn the world to keep you safe. But these people, I'm not afraid, she said, stepping closer. Not of them. Not if it's with you. He looked at her like she was something holy, something he didn't deserve but couldn't let go. Then without another word, he pulled her close, holding her so tight she could feel his heartbeat shaking. If anything happens, he whispered, you run. Don't wait for me, she shook her head. No, I'm not leaving you again. Outside, the wind rose, carrying the promise of another storm. Inside, the firelight flickered across their faces. Two people standing on the edge of something they couldn't control. Because in Raphael's world, love wasn't just a risk. It was a weapon. And now, the whole city knew he'd fallen for someone worth killing for. In that moment, Raphael De Luca stopped being the hunter, and the game began to hunt him back. The storm hit before sunrise. Wind howled through the trees, rain lashed against the cabin walls. And somewhere in that chaos, engines growled in the dark. Raphael knew that sound. Not nature, not weather. Men. He pulled back the curtain just enough to see headlights cutting through the fog. Two black SUVs, no plates. No hesitation. Get down, he whispered. Arya froze. Raphael, what is it? Go to the back room, now. She wanted to argue, but one look at his face told her this wasn't the moment. She ran. Raphael moved fast, sliding open the weapon case beneath the bed. 2 pistols, 1 rifle, 2 spare clips. Not nearly enough for what was coming. He loaded up, breathing slow and steady. No panic, no noise, just purpose. The first SUV stopped at the gate. Doors opened. Men poured out, dressed in black, carrying silenced rifles, masks pulled tight. Raphael smirked under his breath. Marco never could do subtle. He switched off the lights and crouched by the window. The first man came close, checking the perimeter, flashlight slicing through rain. Raphael waited. Waited, then boom, 1 clean shot. The man dropped. Another shouted, "Contact!" The quiet morning shattered into gunfire. The cabin became a battleground. Raphael moved like a ghost, quick, brutal, precise. He'd been hunted before, but never with someone he had to protect. Bullets tore through the walls, glass shattered, smoke filled the air. Inside, Arya hid behind a wooden cabinet, covering her ears. Every sound, every crack of gunfire echoed like thunder in her chest. She wanted to run out to help, to see him, but she remembered his words. Don't wait for me. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer she wasn't even sure she believed. Outside, Raphael ducked behind the porch rail, reloading. 1 shot grazed his arm, blood mixing with rain, pain barely slowing him down. He fired back, dropping 2 more, but they kept coming. Too many. He grabbed the radio from a fallen man, hissed into it. You picked the wrong day to come for me. Then, a sound he didn't expect. The back door opening. Arya! He shouted. She stood there, pale but fierce, holding a flashlight like a weapon. I'm not hiding anymore. Get back inside! He barked, but she didn't move. Behind her, through the rain, another figure emerged, tall, broad, gun raised. Raphael's heart stopped. Down! He sprinted toward her, grabbed her by the arm, pulling her just as the bullet flew past. It shattered the cabin door instead of her. He shoved her inside, slamming the door behind them. Raphael, I told you, never freeze when I say move. She flinched at his tone, tears in her eyes. but before either could speak, another shot ripped through the window. He turned, fired back blindly. "Go, Arya! Get to the cellar!" She ran, ducking behind broken furniture as Raphael laid down cover fire. She reached the cellar door and looked back. Raphael, drenched in rain and blood, standing in the doorway like a soldier who'd already made peace with dying. Their eyes met. No words, just that one look, the kind that says I'd give everything for you. He shouted, "Go." She disappeared below, and the trapdoor slammed shut. Then the silence hit. Only the storm and the click of Raphael's last bullet sliding into the chamber. He stepped out onto the porch, lightning flashing across his face. "You want me?" he called into the rain. "You found me." The gunfire returned, deafening, relentless. Raphael fired back until there was nothing left but smoke and silence. When it finally ended, he stood there, shaking, breath ragged. Bodies in the mud, blood on his hands, and the sound of sirens far away, not police, but more of them. Raphael De Luca had survived the ambush, but every shot fired that night brought the world closer to their door, and as he limped back inside to find Arya, one truth echoed louder than the thunder. You can run from your enemies, but never from the consequences of who you are. The cabin was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. Smoke seeped through the cracks, and the air tasted like gunpowder and fear. Raphael staggered through the main room, half limping, blood trickling down his arm. He'd survived the ambush, barely, but the fight had awakened something darker, that old, dangerous part of him he'd tried to bury. He called out, hoarse, "Arya!" No answer. He kicked open the cellar door. "Arya!" A faint cough came from the shadows below. Then her voice, weak but alive. "I'm here." Relief hit him like a flood. He reached down, pulling her up by the arm. She gasped at the blood on his sleeve. "You're hurt." "I've been worse," he muttered. "We have to go." Arya looked toward the shattered window. Flames licked up one of the walls, turning the wooden frame into glowing ash. "The fire's spreading," she said. Raphael grabbed his bag, tossing it over his shoulder. "Then we move before it takes the rest." They pushed through the smoke, coughing, eyes stinging. Outside, the rain poured harder, the kind that soaked you to the bone in seconds. Arya slipped on the mud, but Raphael caught her by the waist, pulling her close. "You okay?" She nodded breathlessly. "Yeah, just don't let go." He didn't. Not once. Even when bullets flew, when sirens wailed somewhere far behind the trees, when every instinct screamed run faster. His hand never left hers. They reached the forest edge. The road ahead was empty, slick with rain, stretching toward the city lights in the distance. Raphael stopped for a moment, catching his breath. Arya looked up at him, trembling. "Where do we go?" He stared into the dark horizon. "Anywhere but here." A sound cut through the rain, the sharp snap of a branch. Raphael raised his gun instantly, scanning the trees. "Who's there?" He barked, no answer. Just rain, then a faint light ahead. Headlights. Raphael's pulse jumped. "Truck," he muttered. "Maybe abandoned." He motioned for Arya to stay low and moved forward cautiously. The vehicle was half hidden off the road. One door open, engine dead. A farmer's truck by the look of it. He climbed in, checked the ignition. Nothing. Then, by some miracle, the keys were still in the mud nearby. He turned them once, twice. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. He looked back at her. "Get in," Arya hesitated. "You can drive?" He smirked faintly through the pain. "Sweetheart, I can do a lot of things I shouldn't." They took off down the wet road, tires sliding across puddles. Behind them, the cabin burned like a dying star, orange flames swallowed by the storm. Arya turned in her seat, watching it fade away. "That place. It was the first time I felt safe," she whispered. Raphael glanced at her. "Safety doesn't live in walls. It lives in moments, and will make new ones." For a long time, neither spoke. Only the sound of rain against the windshield filled the silence. Then Arya broke it. "You could have left me there. Saved yourself." He gripped the wheel tighter. "Don't ever say that." You risked everything for me, Raphael. Why? He looked at her for a heartbeat, really looked. Because the night I saw you dance, he said quietly, I stopped feeling dead inside. And a man who's already lived in the dark doesn't let go of the first light he finds. Her eyes softened, tears blending with rain. You think this light will survive the storm? He smiled faintly. It already is. The storm began to fade as they crossed the bridge out of the woods. The horizon glowed faintly, city lights like scattered stars. They didn't know what waited ahead. Enemies, redemption, maybe both. But for the first time since that night at the party, they were no longer running from the past. They were running toward something, together, because love doesn't ask for permission. It demands courage. And tonight, Raphael DeLuca chose courage, in the arms of the woman who made a monster remember what it meant to be human. The skyline of New York rose out of the fog like a memory that refused to die. Neon lights, sirens, the pulse of a city that never slept. And for Raphael DeLuca, never forgave. He parked the stolen truck in a narrow alley off Brooklyn Pier. Steam hissed from the vents, the smell of rain and gasoline mixing in the air. Arya looked out the window, eyes wide. Feels like a lifetime since I was here. Raphael shut off the engine. For me, it is a lifetime. They slipped into the shadows, moving fast. Every corner of the city had a ghost that knew his name. Raphael guided her through back streets, past shuttered stores and flickering streetlights, until they reached a rundown apartment above a closed bakery. Safe house? She asked. Used to be, he said, unlocking the door. Now it's just what's left. Inside, dust covered everything. Old photographs, bottles, a worn leather jacket thrown across a chair. Traces of the man he used to be. Arya set her bag down gently. You lived here once, he nodded. Before the suits, before the wars. For a while, silence filled the room. The city hummed below them, alive and dangerous. Arya walked to the window, watching people move through the rain. How do you live knowing every street has someone who wants you gone? Raphael leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. You stop trying to live. You just survive. She turned, meeting his eyes. And what are we doing now? He hesitated, trying to find a way to do both. Later that night, they sat on the floor, eating cold takeout from a paper box. It should have felt ordinary, but nothing about them was ordinary. Every bite carried silence. Every glance carried meaning. Arya finally said, You save me more times than I can count. Let me save you once, Raphael frowned. You don't owe me that. It's not about owing, she said softly. It's about caring. You keep running from the man you used to be. Maybe it's time to face him. He looked away, jaw tight. Face him and what? Get killed? Lose you? You'll lose yourself if you don't. Raphael stood, pacing. The city lights framed him in the window. Half shadow, half hope. I built this empire on loyalty and fear, he said. Now both are falling apart. The DeLuca name doesn't protect us anymore. It paints a target on your back. Then we changed the name, she whispered. He turned, eyes softening. You think it's that simple? No, she said. But maybe it's a start. The air between them thickened with things unsaid. Raphael stepped closer until they were inches apart. For the first time since the night he took her, there was no power between them, only truth. I don't deserve you, Arya. She shook her head. Stop deciding what I deserve. You took me from a party, Raphael, but somewhere along the way you gave me something back. What? A reason to believe in people again. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Outside, thunder rolled again, but this time, it sounded like applause. He whispered, You have no idea what you've done to me. I think I do, she said, smiling through the tears. And then, for the first time, they kissed. Slow, hesitant, real. No power, no fear. Just two broken people choosing each other in a city built on lies. Outside, New York kept moving. Cars, sirens, endless life. But inside that tiny apartment, time finally stopped, because love doesn't erase the past. It dares to exist in spite of it. And for Raphael DeLuca, that was more dangerous than any bullet. Tomorrow, the world would find them again. But tonight, for the first time, they weren't running. They were home. Peace never lasts long in New York, not for men like Rafael DeLuca. Not when every shadow carries a memory with teeth. For 3 days, the safe house stayed quiet. No phone calls. No footsteps in the stairwell. Just the hum of traffic below and the illusion of safety. But on the 4th night, that illusion broke. Rafael was cleaning his pistol at the kitchen table when a soft knock echoed at the door. 2 taps, pause, 1 tap, a code only a handful of his men ever knew. He motioned to Arya to stay back, then opened it slowly. A man stood there, drenched in rain, nervous eyes, the look of a soldier carrying bad news. "Luca," Rafael said, relieved. "I didn't think anyone was still loyal." Luca nodded quickly. "I am, boss, always, but you need to know. Someone sold you out." Rafael stiffened. "Who?" Luca hesitated, eyes dropping to the floor. "It was one of ours. Nico. He's been feeding your location to Marco's crew for weeks." Arya stood by the window, hands clutching the curtain. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then we're not safe here." Rafael nodded once. "No, we're not." Luca stepped inside. "I came to warn you. They're moving tonight. You've got maybe an hour before they find this place. Then we move now," Rafael said. He turned to Arya. "Pack what you can carry." But Luca didn't move. His hand stayed inside his coat just a second too long. Rafael noticed. "Take your hand out," Rafael said quietly. Luca froze. "Boss, I swear I—" "Now!" Luca's eyes flicked to Arya, then back to Rafael. And that was enough. Rafael moved first, gun drawn, safety off. Luca lifted his hand slowly, revealing a small, blinking red light. A tracker. Rafael snatched it from him and slammed it on the table. "Who else knows, Marco?" "Everyone?" Luca stammered. "He made me. He said if I didn't—" Rafael cut him off. "You led them here." Luca shook his head, tears mixing with rain. "I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Rafael said coldly. He looked at the man who'd once taken a bullet for him and felt something break inside. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. The truth that in his world, loyalty was a currency that always ran out. Rafael lowered the gun. "Get out," Luca blinked. "You're letting me go? Run far enough, and maybe they'll believe you're dead," Rafael said. "But if I see you again—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Luca nodded once, shaking, and disappeared into the rain. Arya came closer, placing a hand on Rafael's arm. "You didn't have to let him go." "Yes, I did," he said quietly. "I'm done with blood for blood. It never ends." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "So what now?" He checked his watch. "We've got 45 minutes before they're here. We move to the rooftops, take the river route." Arya hesitated at the door. "Rafael, you don't have to keep doing this alone." He looked at her, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "Arya, alone is the only way I've ever kept someone alive." But she didn't listen. She took his hand. And this time, he didn't pull away. Outside, somewhere in the wet streets of Brooklyn, engines roared to life. Marco's men were coming. Loyalty had died tonight, and war was already on its way. But Rafael DeLuca wasn't the same man they remembered. He was something new, a leader with something to lose. And for men like him, that made him far more dangerous. Betrayal had lit the fuse. Now, love would decide how the fire burned. There comes a night when every sin demands an answer. When every shadow finds its shape. And for Rafael DeLuca, that night had finally come. The rain had stopped, but the city still bled neon across wet pavement. Somewhere down by the East River, engines idled. Marco's men were here. Rafael checked his weapon one last time, not out of fear but routine. Beside him, Arya wrapped a jacket around her shoulders, eyes steady, unafraid. "You don't have to go out there," she said softly. "I do," he replied. "If I don't end this, it never ends." They moved through the abandoned warehouse district, each step echoing like fate itself. The air smelled of salt and iron. The kind of place where ghosts like to linger, and waiting beneath the flicker of a broken streetlight was Marco. He stood with half a dozen men, coat collar up, cigarette glowing in the dark. When he saw Raphael, he smiled. That same cruel smile that had haunted half the city. "Well, look who finally came out of hiding," Marco called. The legend himself. Raphael didn't answer. He just kept walking until he was close enough to hear the waves crash behind them. "You took everything from me," Marco said. "My crew, my streets, my future." Raphael's voice was calm, cold. "You took my peace. You threatened my woman." "That was your mistake," Marco laughed, flicking the cigarette into the gutter. "She's the reason, huh? Figures, you were untouchable, until you let love in. And maybe he was right. Love had made Raphael vulnerable, but it also made him human. And that's something Marco would never understand." The silence stretched thin. Then, chaos broke loose. Gunfire, sparks, echoes bouncing off the river walls like thunder. Raphael dove behind a crate, returning fire, his movements sharp, precise, years of instinct in every motion. Arya crouched behind a rusted car, fear in her breath but courage in her eyes. One by one, the men fell, smoke and silence swallowing the night. Finally, it was just Raphael and Marco. They stood face to face, two kings of ruin, two men carved from the same violence. "You don't have to do this," Arya shouted from behind. "Walk away." Raphael's grip tightened on the gun. His jaw clenched. "He won't stop," Marco sneered. "You're right. I won't." He raised his weapon. But Raphael was faster. Marco collapsed, a look of disbelief frozen on his face. Raphael stood there for a long moment, rain starting to fall again, washing the blood into the street. When it was over, Raphael dropped the gun and looked at Arya. Her eyes were full of tears, not fear, but relief. "It's done," he whispered. "It's finally done." She stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for his. "You didn't lose yourself out there," she said quietly. "You found who you really are." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just finally stopped running." They walked away together, the city glowing behind them, a place of sin, sorrow, and second chances. For the first time in years, Raphael didn't feel like a ghost. He felt alive. And as the morning light broke through the clouds, he turned to Arya and whispered, "Let's start over. No titles, no blood. Just us." She smiled. "Just us. Love doesn't fix a broken man. It reminds him he's still human, and sometimes that's enough to save even the darkest soul." In a world built on power, trust, and betrayal, love still found a way. If you believe even the darkest hearts can change, don't forget to subscribe, because every story here reminds us that love is never truly lost. BRD Stories Hub, where every love burns a little brighter.